Good afternoon. Welcome to all of our iLIFE participant hired workers to today's session about EVV. Today, we will be presenting information about EVV in Wisconsin and specifically how it impacts participant hired workers using iLIFE as their fiscal employer agency. We are just starting now, and this event is being recorded to be shared with iLIFE for future use. I hope you all were able to take a little time to answer the questions on the poll, and we'll go ahead and close that now. Looks like we had pretty good turnout, 72 people reply, and it looks like many of you are getting pretty comfortable with using it. That's awesome. And of course, we have some that aren't quite comfortable yet, but we're going to work on getting you there. So thank you for participating. Before we jump in, I'd like to take a minute to introduce the iLIFE and DHS team on the call today. From iLIFE, we have Megan Kintz, the operations supervisor and previously a participant liaison. And from DHS, we have Dana Rowie, our deputy director, bureau director, Amy Chartier, our section manager of IRIS policy and operations section of Bureau and Policy Programs and Policy. Sheila Isens, she's one of our EVV business leads, and she'll be helping us with questions later on. And I'm Amber Bay, our EVV training specialist. We are all here to help you get more comfortable using an EVV system. Let's take a look at our objectives for today. First, we're going to know EVV's purpose and timeline. We're going to understand what EVV is and the methods to record visit information. We're going to build knowledge for using an EVV system, prepare to log visits with an EVV system, identify additional EVV resources, and get your EVV questions answered. Today's training was developed for all iLIFE PHWs to successfully use an EVV system consistently and efficiently. What we discussed here today is very similar to the EVV fundamentals training we conducted last fall. That recording is available now on the training workers page of the DHS EVV website. We will also provide latest information about EVV hard launch, which begins on May 1st of 2023. Information on how EVV impacts the processes used by iLIFE, useful EVV resources for workers, and then we'll also review frequently asked questions to dispel common myths about EVV. Finally, there will be a question and answer time for you to ask your questions. And now I'd like to pass it over to Dana.
Thank you, Amber. The 21st Century Cures Act was signed as a federal law in December 2016. This law requires states to use an electronic visit verification, or EVV, system to collect visit information for Medicaid-funded personal care and supportive home care services. If we don't follow this federal law, Wisconsin will lose money for Medicaid services. EVV uses technology to make sure participants get the care they need. This means there must be an electronic way to collect 6 required pieces of information about each personal care or routine supportive home care visit. Keep in mind, technology can be as simple as a landline telephone, so don't feel put off or discouraged. Next slide. Collecting visit information using an EVV system is required for personal care and routine supportive home care services in these 4 program areas: IRIS, Medicaid and Badger Care Plus fee-for-service, otherwise referred to as the Forward Health Card, Badger Care Plus and SSI Medicaid HMOs, Family Care, and Family Care Partnership. EVV has been required in Wisconsin for personal care and routine supportive home care since November 2nd of 2020. Since that date, we've been in what we call soft launch. Soft launch is a time for providers to learn the system, train their workers, and problem solve any issues before consequences occur. For Wisconsin Medicaid to continue to receive its full federal funding, the Wisconsin Department of Health Services is required to begin imposing consequences for failure to capture required EVV information. The Department of Health Services calls the date that consequences will begin hard launch. On November 14 of 2022, the department announced the EVV hard launch date for personal care and routine supportive home care to be May 1st, 2023. For dates of service on and after May 1st, 2023, there will be consequences when EVV information is not captured for required services. The beginning of these consequences is known as hard launch. Consequences are tailored to each program impacted by EVV. Additional hard launch policy details and consequences will be reviewed in later slides. EVV is technology that captures 6 required pieces of information at the start and end of a visit. Visit information that is collected includes who received the service, the IRIS participant. Who is providing that service? You, the participant-hired worker. What service is provided? Self-directed personal care or routine supportive home care? Where you provided the service, in the community or at the participant's home. The date of the service start time in and service end time out. EVV is not a system that tracks your location throughout the visit. Location is only collected at the start and end of a visit. The 2 service codes that require EVV visit information that apply to participant-hired workers are T1019, self-directed personal care, and S5125, routine supportive home care service. Note that service codes S5126 and T1020 are not relevant for participant-hired workers. They are for provider agencies only. Also of note, the Department of Health Services specifically created the combo code for IRIS. This code can be used if both self-directed personal care and routine supportive home care are provided by the same worker to the same participant in the same visit.
Before I move to the next slide, I do want to reassure everyone that we are taping this and we will have a recording for viewing later on, but we're also bumping up our attendee list as well. For those of you that can't, and we're working on it. Okay, Dana, thank you.
FEAs have the choice to use the DHS provided SAN data EVV system, which is provided at no cost, or purchase their own EVV system that meets the state's requirements. iLIFE has chosen to use the SAN data EVV system provided by the Department of Health Services. The other IRIS FEAs use their own EVV system, also referred to as an alternate EVV system. The Department of Health Services is conducting this training in collaboration with iLIFE because they have chosen to use the DHS provided EVV system. If you work with another FEA or for a provider agency that uses a different EVV system, please refer to the training specific to their chosen system. Now I'm going to hand it over to Amber to talk about the ways to collect visit information within the SANdata EVV system.
Thanks, Dana. SANdata EVV system offers 3 visit verification methods. The mobile visit verification, or MVV method, uses the SANdata Mobile Connect, or SMC. The SMC app is like any other app you use on a cell phone or tablet. This is the most efficient and accurate method. Next method is telephonic visit verification, or TVV. Is a method that uses the client's home landline or a VoIP phone, which is voice over internet protocol, something that plugs into the wall, just like your landline. The third is the fixed visit verification, or FVV method. It uses a small device that is fixed or attached in the participant's or client's home and is the last resort for EVV. The device will provide a code to be called similarly to using a TVV. As needed, it can be ordered from SANdata by iLIFE. I also thought I'd take a minute to give a little plug for the SMC app. Workers have reported they find EVV easier using the SMC app on their cell phone or tablet. The app is like any other app you use on a cell phone or tablet. It is faster, more accurate, and leads to fewer exceptions or errors than the TVV or FVV options. Later on, we are going to talk about training and resources to help you with collecting visit information. We have a really great training specifically for the SMC app that you'll definitely want to check out if you're considering this option. Now, I'm going to hand it back to Dana.
Thank you, Amber. Next, we'll talk about the hard launch policy and how it impacts IRIS, and specifically IRIS participants with participant-hired workers. For dates of service on and after May 1st, 2023, there will be consequences when EVV information is not captured for required services. Consequences include possible IRIS participant disenrollment. In IRIS, non-live-in participant-hired workers providing personal care and routine supportive home care services are required to use an EVV system. Participants, as the employer, must be sure that PHWs are using EVV. Failure to meet EVV requirements will result in participant disenrollment from the IRIS program. Workers will continue to receive payments for hours worked up to the disenrollment date. Participants have a responsibility to ensure that non-live-in PHWs are using an EVV system as required to remain enrolled in the IRIS program. During the monthly contact between the participant and the IRIS consultant will make sure the participant understands the EVV requirements and impact on their IRIS enrollment and discuss participant-hired workers' use of an EVV system. Also during the monthly contact, IRIS consultants will develop a step-by-step 4-month improvement plan, including the participant's choices if the worker continues to not use an EVV system to collect visit information. These choices may include hiring a different worker, firing a worker, using a provider agency, or receiving personal care through fee-for-service medical assistance personal care, otherwise known as MAPC. The consultants will also continue to work with participants to prevent disenrollment, and they will share EVV resources and trainings for participants to share with their PHWs. The 4-month improvement plan is explained in the flyer shown on this slide, but let's also walk through it. During the first monthly contact that a PHW is not using an EVV system as required, the participant's IRIS consultant will not only remind them how to find training resources for you as their worker, but they can help coach your participant so they are ready to meet and talk with you. They will also make sure you have the information you need to collect visit information using an EVV system, since it is required in your job. After the second monthly contact, where a PHW is not using an EVV system as required, your participant's IRIS consultant will complete an EVV risk assessment and notify the participant that their IRIS enrollment is at risk if their worker does not use EVV. Next slide. Your participant's IRIS consultant will discuss the participant's choices to remain enrolled in the program. Again, those choices include hire a different worker, fire a worker, use a provider agency, or receive personal care through a fee-for-service Medicaid provider. After the third monthly contact, where a PHW is not using an EVV system as required, your participant's IRIS consultant will ask them what choice they made and help them finalize their decision. Next slide. After the fourth monthly contact, where a PHW is not using an EVV system as required, your participant's IRIS consultant would disenroll the participant from IRIS, and they would need to enroll in a different Medicaid program in order to continue receiving services. PHWs will be paid for services provided until the participant's disenrollment. iLIFE has the IRIS consultant flyer you've seen on the last few slides and can share that with you. Otherwise, you can access it on the DHS EVV website at the URL shown here on this slide. Next, I'd like to talk through the newly enrolled IRIS participant grace period for non-live-in PHWs. While it is best to get workers to use an EVV system as soon as possible, the Wisconsin Department of Health Services recognizes that newly enrolled IRIS participants need time to adjust to the responsibilities of a self-directed program. Therefore, participants will be given a 60-day grace period after their enrollment date before the rates of accurate EVV system use will be counted for their IRIS participant-hired workers when assessing the participant's compliance with program requirements. This grace period applies only to services provided by non-live-in participant-hired workers and not to services provided by workers who are hired and trained through a provider agency. Now I'm going to hand it over to Megan from iLIFE.
Thanks, Dana. Let's spend some time talking about iLIFE process impacts. Let's talk about the reason we're here. The state option we're using compares and contrasts the EVV information with timesheet information. Timesheets still need to be submitted, and we compare the timesheet to the EVV information logged. iLIFE will match your EVV and timesheet information. EVV duration needs to be greater than or equal to timesheet duration, and service codes and client IDs need to match. We recommend a worker check into EVV at the start of their shift and then check out at the end. It's possible that the worker may perform more services than personal care or routine supportive home care services, so the EVV time may be more than personal care and supportive home care time submitted on that shift's timesheet. There are 3 EVV IDs that workers need to know. First, worker EVV ID, which is also called the Santrax ID. Next, the client's EVV ID. If you work for multiple participants and need to use EVV for all, this number will be client specific. Finally, iLIFE's company EVV ID, also known as the company ID. This is the same for all workers. iLIFE's ID is 2-91496. Workers will receive this letter for each client that they work for if they provide EVV services. If you misplace this letter, you can call or email iLIFE to get another copy sent to you. For corrections, workers must complete the EVV corrections form. We highly recommend and encourage using our electronic version for faster processing. We also have a paper copy you can mail, fax, drop off, or email. We recommend you get in the habit of submitting corrections as soon as errors are realized. Ideally, the correction will be in by the timesheet due date. Now, next slide. Now we'll walk through what it looks like for a worker to check in and out of using EVV and how to ensure that matches what they submit on their timesheet. So let's say a worker arrives at the place of service. They check in using one of the following technologies. Using the SMC app, which is the mobile visit verification, worker signs in to the SMC app, enters client ID, and selects the service codes for the day to start visit. If using the client's landline telephone or telephonic visit verification, worker calls in and enters the client ID and Santrax ID to start the visit. If using the client's fixed device or fixed visit verification, the worker presses the button on FVV device, notes the number displayed, which is a check-in, and writes down the date and service code. The SMC app is preferred method as it's the least burdensome for workers. Be sure to know your EVV IDs. The worker EVV ID, aka the Santrax ID, the client's EVV ID, and iLIFE's company EVV ID, aka the company ID, which again is 2-91496. Note, for check-in, there are 3 different considerations for each of the 3 EVV options. Each option requires different information at check-in. The combo code should be used if the worker anticipates offering both personal care and supportive home care services. Next, we'll walk through what it looks like for a worker to check out using EVV. For checkout, there are different considerations for each of the 3 EVV options. Each option requires different EVV information at checkout. DHS does not require participant verification and signature. iLIFE does not require a participant signature for EVV. DHS also does not require that tasks be logged for EVV. So we're back to our scenario. The worker has provided services and they follow a similar procedure to checkout. For the SMC app, the worker signs into the SMC app, selects My Visits, and clicks Resume Visit to complete the visit. It's important to click on Complete and not Abandon, because abandoned visit should only be used if the employee forgot to complete the visit at the correct time. If using the client's landline telephone, the worker calls in and enters the client ID, Santrax ID, service codes, and confirms entries to end the visit. If using the client's fixed device, the worker presses the button on the FVV device and writes down the number displayed, date, and time of checkout. Workers only have 7 days to report the FVV codes by calling in. The worker does not need to be at the client's home to complete this call and can use any type of phone. Workers will need to enter the FVV device code correctly to prevent errors. The call-in TVV process for FVV requires a call-in code be entered and the call-out code. It is important that the worker understands which is which when writing them down. Note that the call-in process is similar to TVV steps, and we'll share specific call reference guides shortly. Next slide. Remember to enter hours worked on the timesheet as well. There are no changes to how workers should submit a timesheet. If they would like instead to do this electronically, we have an online timesheet portal available. Next. Now we'll talk about getting set up, registered, and training. This is the general iLIFE informational flyer on how to get set up for EVV, including how to submit your email address, which EVV type might work best for you, training material to learn how to use each EVV option, and how to submit corrections. Next slide. And the next, okay. Now we have our iLIFE resources. For anyone new to the EVV roles, there are plenty of training resources. The QR code will take you to iLIFE's EVV training resources page. Browse the page or use the search feature at the top of the web page. And now I'll pass it back to Amber.
Okay, thanks, Megan. In addition to iLIFE's training resources, DHS has several resources available on the DHS EVV website. The QR code will take you to the DHS EVV Training Workers Resource page, and browsing the page, you can find or search it using the feature at the top of the web page. This link will also take you to the DHS EVV Training Workers Resource page, where you can watch videos such as the EVV Fundamentals training, an overview of EVV. You will also find the SMC app training I mentioned earlier today on that page. It's called the EVV Essentials, and it's a really great tool to learn the ins and outs of the app. Also, if you're not familiar with scanning QR codes, just take your phone or device, tap on the camera, and point the camera at the QR code. You'll tap that yellow highlighted box that around the QR code, and it will open the DHS EVV training page. Now I'll pass it back to Megan.
Thanks, Amber. Either the QR code or the link will take you to iLIFE's SMC guide that provides step-by-step details on using the SMC app to check in and out of EVV. We have short videos that demonstrate EVV if you're new to EVV, not familiar with the EVV administrator role, or new to your agency. Take a picture of the QR code to access the videos. It takes you to our site for our EVV administrator training and resources. The link is listed below on the slide, available to view on Vimeo, the platform that we use to show our videos. For those using TVV on a landline or fixed voice over internet protocol from an internet provider phone, you can also review training specific to TVV. The first QR code will take you to iLIFE's TVV video, and the second QR code will take you to the iLIFE TVV reference guide. Next slide. Yes, there we go. Make it easier for FVV. For workers who cannot use the SMC app or TVV, the FVV tracking form is a handy tool to make sure workers have all the numbers they need at their fingertips. Consider helping your workers fill out the card and laminating it so it withstands day-to-day use. Workers should walk through the steps to FVV with participants the first time to make sure they understand what the different numbers are for, and then either keep the form somewhere safe at the participant's home with their permission, or carry the form with you to every visit. And check out this nice job aid. The first page includes basic information and visit tracking log. The second includes a service code key, TVV, FVV toll-free numbers, and best practice tips. You can find the FVV tracking form using the URL at the bottom of the screen, or take a picture of the QR code located at the left. It'll take you to it. And now I'll pass it back to Amber.
Thanks, Megan. So let's take a look at some of our FAQs. First one, how does the worker reset the password? Workers can reset their passwords for the SMC app or MVV by clicking the Forgot Password link. They can either answer security questions to create a new password, or they can request to have a temporary password sent to their email inbox. If a worker gets locked out of their account, they should contact iLIFE for assistance. Note that SANDATA requires a lengthy password, so workers may want to consider using a phrase for their password. SANDATA also requires users to change their password frequently for HIPAA purposes. Does a worker need to have an email address and their own worker ID? Email, yes. All workers in the IRIS program need to have their own unique email address. A worker's email can repeat from one agency to another, but it cannot be shared by another worker. Worker ID, yes. All workers are required to have their own worker EVV ID, aka Santrax ID, in order to log in and out of EVV. Workers are assigned one worker ID from the Secure Forward Health portal. This ID identifies the worker across any provider agency they work with. The client ID. All workers will need to know their client's EVV ID in order to log in and out of EVV. For TVV, this number won't be requested because calling in from the client's landline does this automatically for the worker. All of these ID numbers will be provided to workers by iLIFE and can be kept on the worker visit card. This card is available on the DHS EVV resources and FAQs page, and the QR code above will take you to that FAQs page. Again, if you're unfamiliar with how to use a QR code, just go ahead and open up your phone or your tablet with the camera, tap on the camera and point it at the QR code, and then tap that yellow highlighted box around the QR code and it'll open. Next, do live-in workers need to use EVV? IRIS live-in workers do not need to use EVV. The name and the address of the live-in worker should exactly match the information contained in the submitted supporting documentation. Does EVV GPS monitor location? EVV identifies the location at the start and end of the visit only. It does not track location before, after, or during the visit. And at this time, the GPS location data is informational only. GPS data does not currently prevent shifts from being paid. GPS data will not prevent IRIS participants from being out in the community, and workers do not need to be at the client's home to check in or out. This functionality will not change with hard launch. Next, how is the SMC app used when Wi-Fi signal is weak or not existent? In the DHS provided system, cellular, internet, and Wi-Fi availability are not required at the point of care for workers to check in and check out. Cellular, internet, or Wi-Fi are required at a later time to send that visit information. Workers are recommended to find access to Wi-Fi and log into the SMC app every 7 days to keep iLIFE up to date with EVV information. If the app shows a red line and offline appears at the top, workers will want to start an unknown client visit. If the app is slow or circling, put the device in airplane mode and record the visit data as an offline visit. The SMC app also keeps visit data for 5 days so workers can review their check-in and check-out times. Next, will EVV replace timesheets? EVV does not change or replace current requirements regarding the completion of timesheets. Workers will need to log in and out of EVV for each visit, but submit timesheets per pay period per current practices. iLIFE will compare the EVV and timesheet information to make sure the dates, duration, client, and service line up to evaluate worker compliance. Reminder that worker compliance impacts IRIS participants' enrollment in the IRIS program. Next, can workers view their check-in and check-out times? Yes. The SMC app keeps visit data for 5 days, so workers can review their check-in and check-out times. Workers can also call the Wisconsin EVV customer care to redress additional time. On this slide, you'll see the EVV customer care contact info for both iLIFE and Wisconsin EVV. For iLIFE, you may want to contact them if you're for worker setup or email, timesheets, logging a visit, password resets, EVV corrections or errors, and if you need to order an FVV. You need something else? Maybe you need to call the Wisconsin EVV customer care. You can do that to log into the SMC app for error messages, user not found, or if there's a glitch, or to resolve IT issues. Other times you may want to call them is to unlock an account, to return an FEV device, and those hours are available 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and iLIFE's hours are 8 a.m. to 4:30 Monday through Friday. Okay, now let's move on to your questions. We welcome you to ask questions, and you'll find the tools you need at the bottom of your screen. If you're new to using Zoom, the Q&A icon is for any question relating to the SMC app. Please type your questions here and we'll answer as many as we can. If we run out of time, then we will follow up after the session. Okay. Scott, do you want to take over for the questions?
Awesome. That sounds great, Amber. Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Scott. I'm going to be reading the questions that we receive from your submissions on the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. It looks like some folks have already taken that opportunity to ask some questions. I see some in our queue. And so in just a moment, I'll start reading those. I did want to mention that during our presentation, some of the questions that were asked early were just recently even answered, but what I'm going to do is reread those questions just to help reinforce the answer to that, make sure that we got them all. And so some of these questions you may, if you were here during the presentation, may say, oh, that was just answered. Why did we ask that question? Well, that's the reason why. So I'm going to get going with that now. The first question comes to us actually as a pre-question before the session. And maybe, Megan, can we reiterate, or Sheila, how long does data that's logged remain in the SANdata app? I think that was just one of our FAQs. Could we reiterate how long the visit information remains in the SANdata app?
Yeah, so the visit information will stay in SANdata portal indefinitely. You have 365 days to make any corrections to those visits, but as far as the SMC app, the visit information for workers to see is 5 days.
Yeah, and please keep in mind as we're answering these, Sheila, that these are all workers from the iLIFE team, and so not administrators or people who would be working in our portal, okay?
Thanks, yep.
Yep. And then also, Megan, if you could help us with this, one of your workers asked, what if we provide care for one client in multiple locations? How do we log visits then?
Rachel, can you take that one?
Oh, Megan, Megan, I might be able to help you. I kind of think of it as two different scenarios. So one scenario may be that a worker starts the visit with the participant in the participant's home and then perhaps ends it somewhere out in the community. That's perfectly fine. EVV will work. You can even mix and match the ways that you check in and out in one visit. So for example, when you arrive or when you start a visit, you might log in using or call in using a telephone, a landline in the person's home. And if you're later out in the community, you could use the mobile app. So I think that that was one scenario. What was the other scenario I was thinking? Anybody, Sheila or anyone else want to add to that explanation?
No, I think it captured it, Dana.
Okay.
The one thing I can add, sorry about that, Scott, is if the participant receives cares at multiple locations, the only time that we would need to be made aware of that ahead of time is if there's multiple landlines that are being used, because then we'll want to add those additional landline phone numbers to the SAN data system on the back end. So for that, you would contact iLIFE to provide that information.
Really good point. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. Good point. Next question comes from Angie. And Angie asks, what is the service code for the combo personal care and supportive home care? And Rachel, I think that's a question that maybe you can help us with.
Sure, I can help out with that. So for the different EVV options, you'll find all of this information in each of the reference guides and the videos that you'll find on our website, as well as DHS's. But to break it down for the mobile application, it will display as combo-PC and SHC. And then when calling in for both the TVV and FVV options, you'll press 30 when asked to enter the service codes.
Excellent. Thanks, Rachel. The next question that we have is question 2, and I don't see a name associated with this, but this person is, we have a person looking for our SMC app in the App Store, but the person only sees a health and fitness app, which is not our SAN data app. They want to make sure that they have the correct app. What should they be searching for in their App Store in order to find the SAN data app? Sheila, is that something you can help us with?
Sure. So SMC stands for SAN Data Mobile Connect. So when you're searching in the app, you're going to want to make sure that you use those words and not search for SMC. And then it should be able to find it.
Yeah, it should pull right up. That is absolutely correct. But if you're having trouble, just let us know and we can point you to our customer care teams, and they can also provide you links to where you find the app or a reference for that for who asked that question. Question 3 is from Lindsay. And Lindsay asks, I think, Dana, this is a question for you. Is it possible for EVV worker numbers to be placed into widgets? And the point from Lindsay is they want to have their EVV worker IDs known to the ICs. So they're readily available if a participant or a participant-hired worker is requesting it.
That's a great comment, Lindsay. And it's not, as you know, it's not in there today, but we can certainly take that back and talk to our system staff and see if that is something that we could accomplish.
Currently, how should ICs get the worker IDs if they're asked for them, or should a participant or participant-hired worker go to iLIFE or one of our customer care groups, Dana?
They would get that, they could get that information from either the iLIFE EVV customer care or the Wisconsin EVV customer care. Either one would be able to help locate a worker's ID number.
Great, thanks. Next question, I think, is for Sheila. Sheila, this is from Patrick, and Patrick asks, how are visits that are longer than 24 hours handled in our EVV systems? The person has been clocking out before the 24 hours and then right back in, or does the system automatically log them out?
Yeah, so the system would automatically log you out after 24 hours. If we're talking SMC, the system's going to log you out, after it's been idle for so many minutes. But from a perspective of visits, it will end the visit after 24 hours. Hopefully I captured that question.
And so if a
correctly.
visit is going to be over 24 hours, definitely log out and then log back in. Is that correct, Sheila?
That is correct, yep.
All right, next question is from Jessica, and Jessica asks, EVV, so EVV does not require tasks to be collected. Jessica asks if tasks are those weird logout tags at the end of phone calls during the call out. That is the main part that she's struggling with. So just clarifying that tasks do not need to be collected and verifying that those are the tags that she gets at the end of her TVV calls. Is that right, Sheila?
Right. So, I mean, there's one tag, right, that you have to put in the service code. So those are, the 10, 20, 30 codes. But then if at the end, if they ask for tasks, then that's where the tags would be.
All right, thanks for that. Next question is a setup question for the SanData Mobile Connect app. And I think, Sheila, if you can also help us with this. Charlene asks that they are trying to get into the SanData app, but they're having trouble logging in. I have the email from iLIFE, but it doesn't give me my username or password for the app. How do I find my username for the first time? Do I just use the forget password to set it up?
Yeah, so your username is your email that you provided and that you got the letter from iLIFE. iLIFE. So that is your username. And if you don't know what your password is, you can definitely use that forgot password, and it will send you a link to reset with a temporary password so you can reset your password. Otherwise, you can also call EVV customer care or iLIFE to have it reset as well.
All right, thank you for that. And Megan, I'm hoping you can help us with this, but if not, we'll pass it on. It's a question from Charlene. Charlene asks, one of my participants has a phone through Spectrum. Will that work for a landline?
TVV will only work with a landline or voice over internet protocol phone. So if it's a smartphone, they'll need to use the mobile app. If it's not a smartphone or a flip phone, this phone can only be used to call in FVV visits. So it actually have to be like the landline connected to the wall type phone.
Thanks for that, Megan. And Megan, if you could just stay on camera there, the next question is also coming your way.
Scott, before we get onto that or go on to that question, I would add that oftentimes through Spectrum, their phone service is a voice over internet protocol that plugs into the wall. So the main point to remember here is about if the phone plugs into the wall, not necessarily that it's a cable TV provider or an internet provider, but if the phone plugs in, it would qualify, or you would be able to use it for TVV or the fixed visit device.
Thanks for that clarification, Dana. Sorry for speeding right along there. I'll make sure I leave them open for a little while longer. Now, Megan, the next question is for you. The next question is question 8. It's from Crystal, and Crystal asks, will we continue to email our paper timesheets?
Yes, so workers will need to continue to submit the paper timesheets in addition to EVV, so that timesheet will still be needed.
Okay, thanks for that. And just a couple logistical questions that we've received so far. The first one is a very popular question, and that is the PowerPoint presentation from today and the recording of today's presentation going to be available through iLIFE? And Megan or Rachel, can you help us with that?
Yes, so after we get the recording, we're going to post it on our website, and we will share that link with workers, ICs, participants, and make that available to view at your leisure if anybody wasn't able to see it.
And the presentation for today?
Yes, that will be available as well.
Okay, thanks. And second, oh, I'm so sorry, Melanie. I see that your question is there closed caption available? And that should be an option for you to start at the bottom of your screen. Sorry, I didn't see that earlier, Melanie, but it is available and it should be at the bottom of your screen as show captions. All right, question 10 is from an anonymous person, and they asked, did you say the participant does not need to complete their signature on the mobile connect at the end of the visit? Megan, can you help us with that?
Yes, that is correct.
And so they, oh, go ahead.
Don't need to, and I was just going to add, yeah, they don't need to add their signature for the participant.
Okay. Thank you for that. And question 11 is from Crystal. Crystal asked, do we still need to track? We are working, let me try to fix this question. Do we still need to track which hours we are working for the different codes? Megan, is that something you can help us with too?
Yeah, so yes, the worker will continue to separate those hours because that would still be needed for the paper timesheet. So you'll want to keep those separate.
All right, just settle right in, Megan, because I think we have a bunch of them.
I will just add to Megan's response. So from the timesheet perspective, you would need to keep them separated. If you were from an EVV perspective, if what you're providing is the self-directed personal care as well as routine supportive home care, you will have the option to choose the combo code. So you wouldn't have to check in and out multiple times in one visit to provide both of those services.
All right, thanks for that clarification, Dana. Next question, Megan, is from someone anonymous, and they're asking whether or not a respite worker is required to use EVV.
They are not. No, respite is not part of EVV.
Okay. The next question is also for you, Megan, and Coven asks that states that they never received an EVV packet. How can they get a new one?
Please reach out to us directly at iris.evv@ilife.org, and we can mail or email you one.
And just following right onto that question, I think it's a good one. Kevin asks, where do you find your StanTrax ID, Megan?
iLIFE EVV support line or the DHS EVV customer care line can provide that for you.
Excellent. And Jenny asks, Megan, is this mandatory?
It is, yes. Yes, EVV is mandatory.
I will just add to that a little bit, Megan. So as I've stated in my slides, EVV is a federal requirement and the state is required to implement it. And we are required to implement consequences in what we refer to as the hard launch phase. So we are quickly approaching the hard launch phase, which is May 1st, 2023. We have been in the soft launch phase since November 2nd of 2020. And during that time, our expectation was that provider agencies and workers learn how to use the EVV system. So it's a federal requirement that we are implementing with our partners such as iLIFE.
Thanks for that, Dana. And I think you addressed the next question from Boris, who asks, what is the deadline for setting up EVV? And as you stated, it's been required since 2020, and our hard launch is May 1st of this year.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for that. Next question is, again, for Megan, and this has to do with rounding rules that you use in iLIFE, Megan. It's from Doris, and Doris asks, are time punches calculated by every 6 minutes or 15 minutes? Do we need to round up or round down?
So this will be something that we need to take back and confirm, but we will have a follow-up answer to that.
Okay, and where would that follow-up be posted so that everyone can see that, Megan?
We'll have it on our website.
Okay. Okay, so more to come on that, Doris. Question 18 is from Patty. As someone who sends in the timesheets for the participant, can I see what each worker has logged in EVV? Megan, is that something that you have available in the iLIFE workstream? Oh, you're on mute there, Megan, sorry.
Thank you.
There
No, that is, they can't see what each worker has logged.
And if they wanted to check what each worker has logged, how would someone do that currently?
By contacting, I know we've had a couple people ask questions on this and want to see what's been submitted. Our liaisons and customer service team have been able to pull that information and talk through that with the participant if they were to give us a call or reach out.
Okay, thanks for that. Question 19 is from Patsy, and Patsy asks, Megan, if a worker only has a flip phone for their cell, they don't have a smartphone device, what should they use for collecting EVV?
So if they only have the flip phone, their best option would likely be the FVV option, that fixed device that goes in the home. And then the workers can use that to get the code and then call in using any phone that they want after completing the services.
And are there any other methods that could be used if someone just has a flip phone? Any other options for collecting visits?
If a worker has a smartphone, they could use that, but if they only have the flip phone, if there's no landline that the participant has in their home, then it would just be the FEV device.
Okay, and the other item that I just want to address, my team can correct me if this isn't an option we should be stating, but I have heard of times when members or the person who receives services actually has a device that a smart device that can be used for a worker to log in and out on if one isn't available directly from the worker. Is that also an option that we're using in iLIFE, Megan?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, all right, great. So a few different options for you there, Patsy. Next question, Megan, is also for you. It's from Anita, and Anita asks so can we still use the paperwork? I think what Anita might be applying is, can they do all of this just through paperwork and not using electronic information, mechanisms?
Yeah, so you can still submit your timesheet, your iLIFE timesheet to us on paper like you are currently doing. But for EVV, it will either need to be the participant's landline if they have one, the smartphone that we talked about for MVV with the SMC app, or finally either the fixed device if those first two options weren't available. So if we're talking about the paper timesheet, yes, you can still use that. But if we're strictly talking about EVV, one of those three options would be needed.
Okay, thanks for that. Next is a question from Daphne from Susan. And Susan asks states she's confused about the participant hired worker ID numbers. She asks, is the number that is received by the worker to be placed on timesheets the same number for EVV?
They are different numbers. For EVV purposes, workers receive a unique EVV ID, and then that number that's on your timesheet, that's just your timesheet number, your PHW ID number. That is not your EVV ID. And then participants also have a unique EVV ID, and iLIFE has a company ID. So really we're looking at three different numbers, but then if you want to count that PHW ID number, there's a fourth, but that is only used for paper timesheets or submitting any forms to iLIFE.
All right, the next question is also for you, Megan. It's from Daphne, and Daphne states that she's an employer represented for, I'm an employer represented for her daughter. Is there a form that she can submit weekly or bi-weekly with the schedule?
Unfortunately not. So EVV needs to be logged at the time of service. So if you're living at the same location as your daughter, you may be exempt from needing to use EVV, but we can talk more about that if you want to reach out to us directly, and we can take a look at your specific situation.
Okay, thanks for that. This is a question, team, that Sheila, maybe you can help us with. It's from Anonymous, and Anonymous says that, and is correct, many workers were set up by iLIFE and received IDs and credentials to log visits with SAN data a long time ago. If it's been a while since they received that information, how do they get their password set up for the first time now? You're on mute there, Sheila.
Technical difficulty. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the SMC app, you can go ahead and you can use the forget password. So even though there was a temporary password for the first time that was sent out, it's expired. So go ahead and do the forget password. And if you need help, you can always call the customer service at iLIFE or at EVV customer care, and we can do that for you as well.
And Sheila, can you walk us through what happens when you hit the forget password link?
Yeah, so if you hit the forget password link, it's going to give you two boxes, and one's going to say, send me an email reset, or the other one is going to, you can answer questions. The only problem is you have to have those questions set up before you can use that route. But if you reset the password, then you'll be able to get to that other piece.
Get another link sent to you based on the email you enter, right? Yep.
Correct.
Thanks. Shannon asks, Dana, this is a timing question. Maybe you can go over this just one more time. Shannon asks, is there a hard launch date?
Yes, our hard launch date is May 1st of 2023. So just under 2 months away.
All right. The next question is from Jessica, and it is a very specific script question regarding TVV. So Sheila, I'm going to give you a crack at this, but we may want to ask Jessica to just call into our customer care team and get the help that she's needing. Jessica says that when she calls out after pressing 2, it states received at a time and service ID blank. She says she puts down 15, presses the 1 key and accepts 1 as the first task. And after putting in the task, she doesn't know what to enter for the task ID. Is it okay to just hang up at that point, and will the visit get locked?
Yeah, so the visit will get logged even if you don't put in a task ID. But there is a list, and I don't want to speak for iLIFE, but I know on the DHS website there is a list of what those codes are for each task.
So it really seems in this case, Sheila, that the person doesn't want to put in tasks. So it's not required. They don't want to put in tasks. They're just asking when they get to that entry of tasks, can they just hang up and have the visit actually get logged?
Yep, and I think that I think it actually tells you that, right? I think it says that you can or hang up, enter task or hang up. So yep, you can hang up and it's recorded your visit.
After you put in the service ID, you can, and it's accepted it, you can hang up. Yep.
Yes.
All right, thanks for that. Question 26 is from Kate, and Kate asks whether or not respite requires EVV. And Kate, we just had answered that question. That is correct. EVV is not required for respite services. The next question is from Holly. Yes.
Scott, can I just, I'll just reiterate one last time that for participant-hired workers, the only services that are required for EVV are self-directed personal care, or the service code number is T1019, or routine supportive home care, which is S5125. Those are the only 2 codes that are required for EVV and IRIS.
Thanks for that, Dana. Question 27 is from Holly. And Holly asks, using the combo code is for if you will be doing both supportive home care and personal care in that shift. What is this code? And Dana, can you help us with that? It kind of keys off of something that I think you might have just been talking about.
Sure. So if you're going to provide both of those services during one shift, and you're using the mobile app to log your visit, you can use the service called Combo. And I think before we said it literally says the word combo and then a dash, PC for personal care and SHC for supportive home care, but it's called Combo in the mobile app. And then if you're calling in on a landline phone or using the fixed device, I believe the number or the code is 30. Sheila, can you confirm that I have the right number?
Okay, you got it.
So it would be 30 for a landline phone or a fixed device, and it is the combo code if you're using the mobile app.
Thanks for that, Dana and Sheila. Next question is for Megan or Rachel. It's from Carmen, and Carmen's asking whether or not the IRIS EVV support line is up and running. They just had some problems. It sounds like calling in, and just wanted to confirm, that it's up and running, and that if they leave a message, they should get a call back.
So our line is up and running with customer service. They're using that line. Would this have been for the EVV support line? That isn't the iLife line, perhaps?
I think it says the Iris EVV call-in, so I'm guessing that's probably iLife.
Okay, yes, our line is up and running. And like I said, our customer service department is handling that.
Yeah, and just to clarify, Carmen, both the EVV, DHS, EVV customer care line and the iLife line are up and running. And the hours are something that we went over before, but it's basically business hours for both of them. Here's the iLife slide, and here are both those contact numbers here shown on the screen. So thanks for that. Next question is from an anonymous person. And the question is, can a worker check in at home right before going to the participant's home and then check out later in the day when they have time? Example, a worker stops by briefly by the participant's house to make a quick meal. Then the PHW has to leave to pick up their own kids from school, so does not have time to EVV check out until later that day. How should that be handled, Dana?
Part of electronic visit verification is ensuring that the person providing the service is with the person receiving the service. So the example that you provided would not be recommended. We wouldn't want you to check in prior to being with the individual receiving services. Since you're still completing a paper timesheet, I think you could address perhaps the fact that you need to maybe leave briefly to take care of something else and come back, and you could do the check out when you return. But I would definitely recommend, or it is required, that you do the check-in when you are actually physically with the individual that you are providing services to.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Dana. And just kind of a time check, we're at a little after 3 o'clock. We have about 20 more questions in the queue at the present time and growing. So we have plenty of questions out there to get to. So thanks everyone for the engagement. I see most everyone who started attending is still here listening to the Q&A session. So please go ahead and submit those questions. We'll try to get through as many of them as we possibly can. And if we run a little short, we'll address how we're going to do that at the end of today's session. All right, next question is from Charlene, and this is a question for Megan on the iLife team. If workers find an error, they need to submit a correction form, right? How do they submit those correction forms?
Yep, that's correct. On our website, you'll find both the electronic version and a paper option for submitting corrections. Like I mentioned before, it's best practice to submit it in that time when you're submitting your timesheet. That way you've gone through and compared your hours and know that everything matches and your data looks good. So yes, you can find that both on the website, both electronic and paper copies of that.
Thanks for that, Megan. Next question is from Lena, and Lena asks, can workers use both the landline telephone method and the mobile connect method for logging visits?
I'll take that one. Yes, that's correct. Workers can use the option that works best for them. So you could do that.
All right.
And just to add a little bit here too is you can actually, call in using TVV and call out using the SMC app. They work. So it doesn't have to be the full visit. It has to be one or the other method. It can be both, a combination of types.
Thanks for that, Sheila. And Megan, I think the next question is for you. It's from Susan, and Susan, rightfully so. When you first start using EVV, right, all the numbers and IDs can be a little confusing till you've done it a few times. If someone has lost or misplaced their IDs and the numbers to use EVV, how do they get them again?
Reach out to us. You can either email us at the iris.evv email address, or you can give our customer service team a call, or you could even call the EVV customer care line and we can help get those numbers or even that letter resent to you.
Thanks, Megan. And I think this is a little duplicative from the last question, but I would like to ask it. Anonymous asks, what if a worker forgets to log in, but then they're 30 minutes into their visit and they're like, oh, I have to log in. So they log in 30 minutes late. How do they get credit for that, those 30 minutes?
So we're going to go back to that corrections form that we just mentioned. Get that EVV corrections form from our site, and then go ahead and submit that when you're submitting your timesheet, and that will take care of it.
Excellent, Megan. And just while you're here, you know, before we were talking about signatures and not requiring signatures for EVV, but a person asks the question, do they have to take a picture of their client?
They do not, no. So you, so it's not required, and you can skip the client verification steps.
Yeah, and and our mechanisms don't even have a function to take pictures of clients, so that would never be appropriate in using the SAN data methods. The next question is from Jenny, and Jenny asks, will EVV log travel time automatically? Dana, is that a question you can help us with?
I think we would need more information to answer that question. So maybe if you could put some more information into the Q&A, or if you provide us with your email address, we could follow up separately.
But we can state, right, that there is not a function in our EVV collection methods that separates travel time from just a visit being collected for care, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. Next question is from Holly, and Holly asks, is the timesheet where you would separate the personal care? I think what Holly's asking is, in the timesheet, where would you separate personal care and supportive home care hours? And then when logging into EVV, you just enter a time code for the day of your visit, rather than each individual service. Is that right?
Right. So for EVV, if you're providing both PC and SHC, you only need to put the combo code. But when submitting your paper timesheet, or if you use the online portal, you'll specifically indicate how many hours of each service you provided. So let's say you had 10 hours of supportive home care and personal care, and you would enter that as the combo code for EVV. But then on your actual timesheet, you would separate it out by service. So if you did 5 hours of personal care, 5 hours of supportive home care, you would put those that way on the timesheet.
Thanks for that, Megan. And I think this next question is one that you can help us with, and perhaps Sheila too. It's from Anonymous, and they ask, what if a worker forgets to log out when care is completed?
So that goes again to the corrections form. So either from our website, you can get the electronic copy or the paper copy, and then submit that with your timesheet when you're finished with your services for that week or pay period.
And Sheila, maybe
Yeah.
technically you can address what actually happens, right? They're going to forget at some point, they're going to remember, and there's going to be a partially started visit there, right? So what should
Right.
happen
Yep.
when the worker realizes what occurred?
Yeah, so when you log into the SMC, you can only be logged into one visit at a time. So if you forgot and you come back the next day, or within the 24 hours, or you go to another client, you're going to come up, it's going to say resume visit. You're going to want to say yes, and then close that visit out before you can start a new visit.
Thanks
I think
for
that's
that,
what you were
Sheila.
getting at, Scott, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
it is. Like, what would they actually do? And they got to end that visit, right? In some
They
way,
have to
shape,
end
or
it
form
to start a new one. Yep.
Yep. All right. And the next question is from Ray. I believe this is again for Megan. How do we record travel time to and from their client's location?
Travel time does not, in that situation, that would not need to be recorded for EVV purposes.
And is that something they would put on their timesheets? I don't know your policy.
If they have mileage and the participant is in the vehicle with them, then yes. But if it's a solo trip, that would not typically be something that's covered for mileage.
All right, the next question is from Austin, and it's a very specific question that has some complexities to it. So Austin, I'm going to ask that you submit your question to our customer care team and get specific help. We will also ensure for question 39, Amber, that we make sure someone reach out to Austin, because I think that's just a question that we're going to want to handle offline. Question 40 is from Jane. Why can't the data be available for 2 weeks in the app rather than the 5 days that we stated? The person feels we need to still create timesheets, thus creating much more work for caregivers who already have difficult jobs. If you sign in at the client's house using the app, then take them out to the community, do you have to do anything in the app? Sorry about that. That's 2 separate questions. So why don't we address the first one as to why the data for like visit history can't be available for 2 full weeks in the app. Dana, is that something you could help us with?
Sure. It really becomes a system capability that just the more visits that we're trying to recall really slows down the mobile app. So Sandata's recommendation is the amount of days that we currently have visible or accessible to workers, and that would be 5 days.
So you would need to keep, oh, go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, we really are encouraging participant-hired workers as well as participants to ensure that they are clocking in and clocking out at every visit, and then looking back becomes less important because you're just doing it as part of your routine for that shift. If you were maybe trying to reference that information in order to create your timesheet, it just is a limitation within the system, and it has to do with how well the system will function if you're recalling too much information back.
And Dana, maybe you could just stay on and address the next question that the person from Jane, if they begin a visit at a client's house, but then go out into the community, is there anything they need to do in the app to say I'm leaving the house?
No, if they're still with the client, they can, and if they're going to end their shift in the community with the client, they would just check out at that time with the participant.
Yep.
If the shift ended while they were in the community. If they go out in the community and come back and end the visit at the participant's home, then you would end the visit at the participant's home. But it's perfectly okay to end a visit out in the community.
And one last easy question for Dana, since I have you. Holly asks, can you please remind Holly what the combo code is in the app? She didn't write down what the combo code was for the app.
Absolutely. So the combo code again is when you're going to provide both personal care and routine supportive home care in a visit. And it's just called combo. What is showing on the screen right now is exactly what it will look like in the mobile app. So it'll say combo-PCS for personal care services and SHS for supportive home care services. So that is what you would see.
Okay, thanks for that. Next, we have a 3-part question from Lena, and so I'm going to ask each of them separately. The first question is, if you work overnight, can you check out only, if you work overnight, how should you check in and out is the question.
I can take that. Unless it's longer than 24 hours that you're with the client. So for example, if you were to come to the participant's home at 10 p.m. and you leave at 8 a.m. the next morning, you can just check in once when you get there and check out when you leave. The only caveat is when you are working more than 24 hours is when the mobile app will automatically sign you out. So if you are working longer than 24 hours, then we do encourage you to check out at some point before you hit the 24 hours and check back in until you actually leave the participant. But
Thanks,
otherwise, if it's less than 24 hours, there is nothing additional that you need to do, even if it spans 2 days.
Thanks for that, Dana. Next question, I think, is for Megan, again from Lena. Do we still use the different numbers for employees on the timesheets, which are different than the EVV worker codes or IDs?
Yes, so your EVV worker ID will only be used for EVV. That 5 to 6 digit number that you get from iLIFE on your timesheet, on your start date letter. You will still use that number for your timesheets. And let's say if you're submitting some kind of status change or maybe a new payment election form, you would still use that shorter number on that document, on any iLIFE document. And then EVV would just strictly be that EVV ID number.
Thanks. And then the last question of this longer question from Lena, thanks Lena, is if a participant loses service or like Wi-Fi or phone in winter or in storms, how should they log EVV visits?
So as long as the worker is able to gain access to Wi-Fi and log in within 7 days, their data will be sent along with no issue.
And Sheila, can you talk a little bit about how we collect those visits in offline mode when that happens?
Yeah, so if you don't have any Wi-Fi, you can still log in. You're in offline mode. And so you can collect the visit just like you would normal. You have to start it as an unknown visit because the system is offline. So it doesn't know what a client ID number is to match it. So you would set it up as an unknown visit. And then after you have Wi-Fi again and you sign back into the system, it will finish that call and send it off to iLIFE.
Thanks for that, Sheila. We have a number of anonymous questions coming in, so I'm just going to start going through those, but they are from anonymous. Dana, this person was told that supportive home care duties could not start or end at a location other than the participant's home. But here on our training today, we said otherwise. Can we clarify that?
Yes, we do allow these services to be provided in the community. So that would not be accurate for supportive home care. The service could be provided outside of the participant's home.
Thanks for that, Dana. Another question from anonymous. They have a worker who uses companion care when completing a timesheet. Does that require EVV?
Is that question for me?
I'm sorry. Yeah,
That's okay.
Companion
Companion care is not one of the EVV required codes. So as a reminder, the 2 codes that are required within the IRIS program are T1019, the self-directed personal care, and S5125, routine supportive home care. Those are the only 2 services that require EVV in the IRIS program.
Thanks for that, Dana. Next question is from Megan, and it's from Loretta. Megan, can you remind Loretta of what to do if you just plumb forget to clock in or out, or both?
We've all done something like that before. So we have this really nice aid, the EVV corrections form, and you can, whichever method works best for you, whether that's paper or electronic, we have options for both on our website.
Yeah. And another question from an anonymous source, Dana, that really deals with that sometimes the participant hired worker runs errands like groceries, going prior to going to the participant's home. Is that going to be allowed for the participant hired worker to punch in starting at the grocery store and then out in the community when they finish a visit, or perhaps maybe even clock back in when they're at the participant's home?
I think I need to phone a friend for this question because I am not as familiar with the rules around that. So is Amy Chartier available to answer a question? Or Megan, if you happen to know the answer to this, I'm just not as familiar.
I would also defer and phone a friend.
Amy, it looks like you might be talking, but we can't hear you.
Sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
So just kind of going back to what Megan discussed earlier about the need for the participant to be with you when services are provided, unless there's something set up differently that's unique for very specific reasons. It would be expected that participant hired workers clock in when they're with the participants. And then again, as Dana stated, they can clock out in the community.
Okay, thanks, Amy. And if you could stay on just for 1 second, I think this might even be the same person. And they just clarify, does the worker have to be with the participant when they clock in and out?
They definitely need to be with the participant when they clock in, yes. And unless they're clocking out late because they forgot to clock out, you would clock out at the end of your visit with the participant as well. That would be the standard.
Okay, thanks for that. And Megan, I think this next question is from you. I'm going to interpret the question a little bit from Anita. Anita provides services at different times, like 15 minutes here, an hour there, then half an hour at a different time. How do you do that with EVV?
So with EVV, you would clock in at the start of your shift and at the very end. So you'll then distinguish on the timesheet the exact amount of hours or time worked.
All right, next question is from Carmen, and Carmen asks, so if we pick up a client or family member back to our home, we have been calling in on Friday evening, and then we return them to their home on Sunday evening to call out. So it sounds like they're with the member from Friday to Sunday. So given a previous 24-hour question, our way won't work to cover the weekend. Is that true? How should we log EVV if the visit is truly from Friday to Sunday? Megan, is that something you can help us with, or Dana?
I was going to say I would defer to Dana.
Sure. So I would just keep in mind that EVV will log you out after 24 hours. So if you're picking the individual up on a Friday in the evening, clock in, maybe Saturday morning, clock out, Sunday morning, and then clock back in Saturday morning, clock out either Saturday night and clock back in for Sunday, but it will require a couple different clock in and clock outs as long as it is going over the 24 hours. So there's no specific rule about when you need to do it. I would just keep in mind that it will log you out of the system after 24 hours. So you'll need to do it manually.
Thanks for that, Dana. The next question is from Leonid, and Leonid asks, some of my participants spent weekends or 3 to 4 days with families, meaning they receive services not at home. Can workers check in and out at different addresses? I think we've covered this a little bit, Megan, but could you just reemphasize the point about clocking in and out at different addresses?
Sure. So if using the mobile app, you can log in and out from any location. If using the landline or TVV option, you'll need to make sure that iLIFE has all of those landline phone numbers so we can make sure it's entered on the back end. And then for the fixed device, that's only available at one place of service, so that would be in the participant's home.
Thanks for that, Megan. Sheila, can you help us with this next question? It's a specific TVV question. When clocking out, should we hang up after the time was given, or do we continue and add the client ID again?
You don't have to add the client ID again, but you do have to enter a service when you're clocking out.
Thanks for that.
And then you can hang up.
Next question is from Anonymous. Anonymous asks, if a worker provides a mix of services over an 8-hour period, like personal care and supportive home care, is the worker expected to log in and log out each time there is a transition of a type of service? Dana, you've hit on questions similar to this. Could you provide
Sure.
this person an answer?
So it's kind of two different answers. From an EVV perspective, you can use the combo code because you're providing both of those services during that time. On your timesheet, you will need to break out the exact services that you provided. So if you provided personal care, supportive home care, or perhaps even additional services while you were there, that would need to be spelled out on your paper timesheet that you return to iLIFE.
All right, thanks for that. Next question is from Crystal. And Megan, I'm going to need help with this one because I'm not sure what the IRIS portal is. Do we enter the hours in the IRIS portal?
So yes, if Crystal, you're referring to the IRIS, the iLIFE timesheet portal, you would submit your EVV hours by whichever method you're using, and then also you would still submit your hours on the portal by service code for those same hours worked. So you would do both if you're referring to the iLIFE portal, yes.
All right, thanks for that. And Megan, maybe you can stay on. Holly has a question about what happens if you clock in as supportive home care or personal care, one of those two specific codes, but you end up doing a combo service during that visit. Can you just use a paper timesheet, or will this need to be corrected on the correction form that you talked about?
So again, EVV is in addition to paper timesheets. So no matter what, you're going to still use that paper timesheet. But if you are commonly doing both services, we would recommend always selecting combo just to make it easier on yourself, and then only clock in, clock out at the start and end of your shift. But if you only put it in for EVV, but both for the timesheet, you'll still need to submit the correction form then. So timesheet, no matter what, and then combo code for EVV if you can. And then if you need to submit a corrections form, like I said, those are on the website.
Thanks. I think this next question from Alyssa is for either Dana or Amy. Team Alyssa asks, if I do work for my son from home, like attend online meetings or do paperwork for her son, do they just log EVV from home since they're not with their son at the time?
So it's unclear to me. So the description of attending meetings or paperwork doesn't seem related to either of the two service codes that require EVV. So I'm not seeing how this would be applicable to EVV.
Okay. So what you're saying is attending online meetings or just doing paperwork when you're not with the person may not be a personal care service or a supportive home care service.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. So Alyssa, you might need some follow-up with that. You might want to call the customer care lines if you do, or the benefit care lines. Next question is from Kovan, and Kovan asks, Megan, maybe you can help us with this. How do they request an FEV device if that's what they would like to use? And how do I put, I'm not sure what the second part of the question is, but how does Kovan request an FEV device, Megan?
The participant or guardian may contact iLIFE or EVV customer care. And then as far as the company, I believe you're referring to the iLIFE company ID number, which I can find for you shortly, but iLIFE has only one company ID number if that's what you're speaking to. Otherwise, if I did not explain that answer well, feel free to reach out to us directly and we can answer more specifically to your question.
Great.
Hey,
And
Scott.
yes.
Just wanted to let you know, question 45 we missed.
Oh, thanks for that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to ask you to help us with that then, Sheila. It's from Lena. And what number do we use to call in time on their phone? How do you use TVV? So what 800 number, I think you're saying, Lena, do you use to call in TVV? And actually, that's not for you, Sheila. That would be for
Yeah.
I'm sorry, was that for me?
Yeah, that's for you,
Okay,
Megan.
I'm sorry. The numbers to use are 844-769-5920 or 855-792-3524. And those are the TVV numbers. I also just wanted to quick plug, or not plug, but mention iLIFE's company ID is 2-91496. So we had mentioned that briefly earlier.
Thanks. And Leah, if you ever need those TVV line numbers for iLIFE, you can always call their customer care lines, right, Megan, and get those if you missed them on being read off to you here.
Yep, that's correct. And they're also available on the website, as well as like on that FVV tracking form. We have them listed there as well.
Okay. I'm going to read the next comment, and I don't know if any of our panelists want to also state anything about this comment, but I'm going to read it. It's from Anonymous. Why does this need to be so complicated? It makes me not want to be part of the process. And I think that is a sentiment that often for in change, can sometimes exist. So I think it's a very applicable question. And something that maybe we can share experiences from people that have just been starting to use EVV. Dana.
Sure. Thank you for that comment, because I'm pretty certain that probably many people on this call feel that way. It is something that we hear often. What I would encourage you to do is not be discouraged. Hearing this is a lot of information to take in today. But if you really just break it down and look at your worker ID card and start practicing using EVV either on the mobile app or the telephone, it really isn't that complicated once you have all of the tools in your hand to be successful. And we have seen that with other individuals who were struggling. And when they contacted our customer care center and they walked them through one-on-one, which we're happy to do, the process of logging a visit either through the mobile app or calling it in through the telephone, people become successful. They get they get all of the data that is necessary and they successfully log a visit. So I know this sounds like a lot of ID numbers and it sounds complicated. Once you really start getting into the routine, it's not. Or that's what we hear from people is, oh, well, that wasn't so hard, but they do experience that maybe something is tripping them up, and we want to be there to help you, and we want to help you before we move to hard launch. So please give EVV a try now and let us help you work through any barriers that you are currently experiencing.
Thanks for that, Dana. And thanks for that comment for whoever put it into the chat. I think that is absolutely important and nice that you put that in to be addressed. Question 49 is from Rachel. If the service code is wrong on the timesheet, do we change it or can it be any order to list the hours on? I'm not as familiar with iLIFE timesheets, so Megan, please help us out with that.
Sure. Rachel, I would love for you to reach out to us directly because this sounds like we might need to work with your participant and the consultant to make sure that the codes are reflected properly. So please either give us a call with our customer service line, or you can email us as well, and we'd be happy to help to the bottom of that for you.
Yeah, and I think the next question, Megan, is also for you. I think it has to do with time cards. It's from Crystal. Do you have recommendations on how hours are split between workers? For example, a person works 40 hours, but there are 3 other employees that work a different amount of hours. What is the best way to let them know what hours are being split between personal care and routine care and companion care?
This would probably be best as a conversation between the IRIS consultant, participant, and the worker. When submitting time to iLIFE, we'll ensure that the correct authorizations are in place to pay out the hours submitted. But as far as how to break those down, we wouldn't take part in that conversation.
Okay. And Megan, a couple more for you. This person started using EVV last Monday, which is great. Do they have to send last week's paper timesheet, or how do they put it in the app? Do I use a correction sheet?
Yes, so you will still need to submit the paper timesheets unless, like I mentioned before, you're using the online portal. If that's the case, just for those hours to be updated on that portal, you can submit them there. But that paper timesheet, you're still going to need to submit a timesheet to iLIFE, whether that's that physical copy or through the portal online.
And so keep doing the paper timesheet the same way people have always done them, right?
Yes,
Just
exactly.
keep that process going. And then
Yes.
in addition, you have to use EVV for each visit.
That's correct. Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. Next question then is, will there be a training with someone actually walking through the process? Some people learn by visually seeing the process be completed. Again.
This is where I would plug our website videos. If you go to our website, we have a whole page of videos on how to use each method of EVV. So you're able to walk through that process with that video. And they've been very helpful.
Okay, next question is from Charlene. And Charlene, you have a very long question that looks a little complicated. So I'm going to try to put that as follow-up to today's session. So Amber, question 53, Charlene, we definitely need to get back to Charlene on that first question. Charlene does have a second question, though, that is to follow on to the previous question. So I'm going to, Charlene, make sure that we reach out to you in the coming days and get in touch with you with this really long question that we have in the box here. Question 55 is from Jordan. Are there penalties if workers forget to end or start visits too often and have to keep submitting correction forms? Again.
I can take that, Scott. I think
Okay.
it's really, it kind of speaks to our hard launch policy and the consequences that occur once we get to hard launch. So once we get to the hard launch date, which again is May 1st of 2023, for any date of service, after that, the expectation is that workers are using an EVV system. And if their usage is less than 80%, or if they need corrections more than 80% of, or more than 20% of the time. So if they're not doing it accurately 80% of the time, that is when we enter that 4-month improvement plan that I talked about in these slides, where every month when the IRIS consultant meets with the participant, they're going to go over that participant's workers' EVV usage. And if it's not 80% or higher, they're going to start the improvement plan. And that involves on the first month, talking to them, talking to the participant, ensuring the participant has the resources to provide training or knows where to find resources to provide training to the participant-hired workers. On the second month, if there is still not reaching the 80% mark, then they will create a risk agreement with that participant and talk to them about their options. And their options might be, continue to train that existing worker, maybe look for a different worker, go to a provider agency, or receive their personal care services through the fee-for-service medical assistance personal care program. On the third month, they're going to ask if it's still not seeing improvement. The IRIS consultant is going to talk to the participant about what choice did you make. And then on the fourth month, if that participants' workers have still not achieved the 80% accuracy or logging in and out 80% of the time, that participant will be disenrolled from the program. So it's a step-by-step process that individuals will work through. And we really encourage you to, if you're finding yourself in that position as a worker and needing to make corrections often, to please reach out for some additional support and see if we can maybe identify where you're experiencing difficulties. Revisit the videos that Megan mentioned earlier on the iLIFE website to gain some additional training.
Thanks for that, Dina. We have a number of questions that I'm going to ask the iLIFE team to take after our session today that have to do with just how to fill out time cards and timesheets. I'm going to focus more on things that are related to EVV. The next question is 57. It's from Holly. Holly asks, are they being paid for time spent doing EVV trainings? And if so, how do we enter the time for meetings or training about EVV? Not sure if that's a question for you, Megan, or maybe Amy.
I would defer to Amy on that.
Scott, can you repeat the question number?
Sure, will do. Question 57, it's from Holly, and Holly asks if if a worker is paid for time spending doing EVV trainings, or how do they enter that time if so?
Yep. So workers would only be paid for the time spent in training if that's included on the participant's plan. Again, this is outside of the scope of EVV. So I would recommend that you address this with the participant or with the IRIS consultant.
And then Amy, when a worker drops a participant off at work, can the worker count their mileage back to their own home?
Only if that's included on the ISSP.
Okay, thanks for that.
Mm-hmm.
Next question is for Sheila. It's from Anonymous. This person asks, we had referenced that data is available on the mobile app for 5 days. Is the data for past visits also available on landline systems for 5 days to be able to look back?
No, unfortunately, I'm sorry, it's not. It is only in the SanData mobile app that you can tell.
Thanks for that. And Megan, I think this is a question for you or Rachel. It's from Jordan, and Jordan asks, can work hours, and I'm associating that to mean time card hours, and EVV hours overlap?
Yeah, so a worker would want their EVV time for PC and SHC to overlap at the same time. So that timesheet you're submitting or EVV is in addition to that timesheet you're submitting. EVV can be slightly more, so you can clock in and out at the start and end of your shift and provide more services than just those that are required for EVV, but they should match ideally between the two.
Okay, thanks for that, Megan. And Ninoshka asks and states that they can't get to the EVV correction form online. How can they get the form if they can't get it online?
If you go to iLIFE.org, and then at the top, you'll see an EVV tab. If you click that down arrow, you'll see EVV training and resources, and that EVV correction form is located under that spot.
And if they can't get to it online, is there a way to get the form differently?
So if you're unable to retrieve it online, reach out to our iris.evv@ilife.org email address, and they can send you, attach a copy, otherwise provide you with the link to the online submission form, and you can use either that way then.
Great, thanks for that. I think this next question is for Dana. Dana, Susan asks, can you please explain when to use the supportive home care per day versus supportive home care per 15-minute code?
So as a participant hired worker, you will only be able to use the SHC 15 minutes. In fact, we're showing all of the options here, but if you were in the mobile app, you wouldn't even see the T1020 or the S5126 because those are not options for you. So participant hired workers can only bill under the T1019 and S5125. And that all those decisions sort of happen at the IRIS consultant level when they are creating authorizations and working with the participant to build the individual services and supports plan.
Thanks for that. And team, I might need help. This next question might need a follow-up call. Question 63 is from Michaeline. They asked, and their comment is, so ADLs are different from taking clients to activities or appointments? Just question, an open-ended question.
I'm not entirely sure what kind of the comparison that they're making, but what I would come back to is, again, that there are only 2 services that we are requiring PHWs to use EVV for, and that is the T1019 Personal Care Services or S5125, the Routine Supportive Home Care.
Okay, thanks.
And
for
if that did not answer the question, please message in or call our customer care line for additional clarification.
Thanks. Yeah, and I think, we had talked before about a very detailed question from Charlene. Charlene, I see you have another one in question 64. Just going to point that to the follow-up that we're going to do for your other questions because it's a very detailed one again. Question 65 is from Carmen, and Carmen asks, can you clarify if TVV logs out after 24 hours like the app? Sheila, can you take that one?
So if TVV logs out after 24 hours. Yeah, so this is a visit. It's just based on visit is what the 24 hours is. It's going to end a visit regardless of how it's called in or what method is used.
Okay, thanks for that. So yes, it will be the same.
Scott,
yes.
There is I think I understand Charlene's question, and it might apply to others on the line as well. So I'm going to try to explain a situation that I think some individuals might be experiencing.
Okay.
So within the IRIS program, participants can receive personal care through the fee-for-service Medicaid or the MAPC program. And those services are paid for by the department's fee-for-service program. They are not paid for by IRIS. Sometimes there are situations where those same workers also provide supportive home care to participants in the IRIS program, and IRIS pays for those services. So in those instances, I think what is being asked is, would the worker be able to use the combo code when they are providing personal care through MAPC and supportive home care through the IRIS program? And the answer to that is no. The reason being, those are two different organizations or programs that are paying for those services. So iLIFE is only paying for the supportive home care component of that visit, and you're only including the supportive home care hours on the timesheet that is going to iLIFE, and the time that is worked under the MAPC agency is reported to the Department of Health Services on a fee-for-service claim. So the combo code cannot be used, even if it's the same worker, when they are being paid by two different entities.
Thanks for that, Dana.
Really quick, Dana. Oh, sorry. A clarification was, what if they are both being paid for by iLIFE? The MAPC, the PC, and the supportive home care.
Well, MAPC is always paid for through fee-for-service, but if you are providing self-directed personal care through the IRIS program and supportive home care through the IRIS program, then yes, you are able to use the combo code.
Thanks for that, Dana. Thanks for the clarification, and Mandy. Question 66 is from Aretha, and Aretha asked, do you have to add a task for each visit on a daily visit? And I think we covered that before, but could we again cover off whether tasks are required, Dana?
We do not require that tasks be entered through mobile app, telephone, or fixed visit verification. It is not a requirement.
Okay, thanks. And the next question is from Patsy. And Patsy asks, can I use Wi-Fi on a tablet at the client's house? The log a visit. Sheila, can you help us with that?
Sure. Yes, a tablet can be used, or a smartphone. Either one will work, and they both, even if there is no Wi-Fi, the tablet can still go into offline mode as well.
Okay, we have just a couple minutes left and a couple questions still in the queue. So I'm just going to get to the ones that I can. If we do have some that we don't get in through today and with the time we have left, there will be someone reaching out to you as long as you left the question with your contact information. Next question is 69, number 69. Would we be able to talk to a person or a rep by calling the 855-511 iLIFE support line? Or will it ask you to leave a message and provide a call back? Megan, can you help us with that?
So iLIFE's goal is to be able to answer your questions as quickly as possible. But when we do have a high call volume, we will have that callback option.
Okay, thanks for that. And then Dana, I think you can help us with this next question. It's question 70. They ask, their parents have been in IRIS longer than 4 months, but their previous FEA didn't have a combo or group codes so that they could try EVV. If their workers make mistakes, because they haven't had much experience with EVV, can they get a 6-month trial period starting now? They need practice before they can really use EVV.
So the grace period that I referred to earlier will go into effect when we move to hard launch, so May 1st. So in the example that you provided, there would not be a grace period. So I would encourage you to start using EVV now, get started, and ask for help if you're having any difficulty.
Okay, thanks for that. And I see it is 3:56, Amber. So I think we are out of time for more questions. We got through most questions, but not all. So again, if there are questions that we didn't get to today to answer live, we will be reviewing all of the questions and ensuring that questions that we weren't able to address today, as long as you left your contact information, we'll be able to get back in touch with you and help answer your question after today's session.
Absolutely.
All right, Amber, back to you.
Thank you. So thank you all for your participation today. We've had such a great amount of questions answered and submitted. So thank you so much. And as you leave today, there will be a survey, so please take that. And we just, again, wanted to say thank you and stay well.